Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Monday Q&As, and yes, this week it is Monday Q&As this time. That's why I still call it that, so it leaves me the option of doing it on Monday instead of Sunday. Sorry guys, I just really needed to recharge yesterday. I had somewhat of a busy weekend up through Saturday and Sunday. I just really felt like I needed to recharge. I needed some me time. I didn't want to leave the house, didn't want to do anything work related, didn't train anything. I just chilled, read, and texted a few friends and did nothing else. I just really wasn't enough to do in the Q&As. I just really needed to recharge. Okay, so let's get started. First question. Would doing 3 sets of push-ups, planks, and bodyweight squats right after waking up be detrimental to recovery in any way? Probably not once you get used to the workload, but I'm going to put a contingency on that. If you're not taking them to failure, if you start doing high rep stuff like that and taking it to failure, you're going to create metabolic inroads, metabolic fatigue that could definitely over the course of several weeks start majorly impacting your recovery. However, if you're just jumping up, let's say you could do 30 bodyweight squats and you do 2 sets of 20, 3 sets of 20, none of them to failure. You do the planks not to failure, a bunch of push-ups and things just to get some extra work capacity in. No, it's perfectly fine. You shouldn't have any issues from that. As long as you're not taking anything too close to failure with all those bodyweight exercises, you could probably help strengthen your core. You could help improve your work capacity, probably burn through a few calories. Maybe even it could almost be active recovery if you're way below the top of your intensity threshold on that stuff. It could actually be considered almost active recovery. So it's probably not going to negatively affect your recovery in any way. So I say go for it if that's what you want to do, as long as you're not fatiguing yourself with them. It can be good for just your overall work capacity and fitness. I see no real issues there. If you start taking it too close to failure though, it could become a problem and you should be aware of that. So just give it a try and build up workload and volume on those things slowly, and if you give your body time to adapt, it could be a very positive thing. So go for it if that's what you want to do. All right, next question. From the same person, I split this into 2 questions. I read that doing a small workout after waking up makes the brain release GABA, making you more alert and motivated. Is this true? As far as the more alert and motivated, I'm not 100% sure on that. However, there is quite a bit of data out there that does show that exercise intensity itself and the effect on this neurotransmitter does seem to reduce anxiety. So if you're prone to anxiety at all, or even you're having a stressful time, doing a little bit of high intensity type training of some type, whether it's weightlifting or HIIT cardio or some sprinting or something first thing in the morning, could bring your overall anxiety levels down. And less anxiety could most definitely impact things like your energy, your alertness, things like that. So maybe through more of an indirect mechanism, but as far as the actual direct alertness and all of that in the morning, I don't know. I'm not familiar with any data showing this, but I could be wrong. Some other people might have something to interject down in the comments, but definitely the impact on anxiety and stress, there is definitely data out there showing that, particularly when the exercise starts to get a little intense. It does affect this neurotransmitter, and it would be beneficial to you in the morning on days when you think you're going to have some stress or anxiety in the day, particularly things like those Monday mornings at work. All right, next question. It is often said that you need more time to recover from deadlifts than from squats, but how much more recovery do you need exactly for the deadlift in comparison to a squat when you do the same sets, reps on the same RPE? There's no way anybody can measure that. We can't tell you exactly how much recovery you need as a general statement. That's stuff that you usually need experienced coaches with. You need to listen to your body with. You need to make observations based upon the individual, and those factors change for you over time based upon your lifestyle, your diet, your training phases. So you're asking basically someone to give you a long calculated formula based upon a dozen different variables isn't exactly not going to happen. Quit looking for stuff like that. You're not going to find it. That's going to be something that you need to observe in yourself. Watch the signs in your body and look at your training programming if you're going to try to really push the frequency on things like deadlifts. And yeah, deadlifts do tax the body more than the squat. I've done videos in the past on that, and it has to do largely with the fact that on the squat you have a strong eccentric loading point because you are compressing energy into the body. So you're actually preloading all the muscle fibers, you're contracting muscle fibers to brace yourself and lower the weight, and you're storing energy in the body like a spring on the way down. And so you now have that energy stored and you can explode back up. it isn't as hard on the nervous system as a deadlift, whereas with the deadlift, you're going to tend to be lifting just as much weight, if not more, using a few more muscles in the body to do it, but you are lifting equal or more weight to the squat through a fairly long range of motion. But the difference is that you have no way to preload your body or store energy on it. There's little tricks you can use to help you with that just a little bit, but you're having to explode it from a dead stop with no energy or preloading of your motor units. You are having to just do it instantaneously, and as most of you know, if you pull a deadlift off the floor slow, you do not engage enough motor units or get enough energy and inertia started to get it moving, you usually miss the deadlift. So you have to explode from a dead stop. That is what puts so much more stress on your nervous system and your body and affects your recovery from it more than the squat. That's the primary reason. So yeah, it will take you longer, but how much longer, I couldn't tell you that as an exact answer. No one can tell you that. So don't look for something like that because you're not going to find it. All right, next question. Is there any point to doing bench press if you don't compete in it and you only train for general strength and sports? Ooh, tough question, because you guys know for me, I don't like the bench press that much. I only bench press because I have to do it in competition, and I would do other movements for pressing exclusively if I didn't have to, but that doesn't mean the bench press isn't good. In fact, I've seen someone like Mike Israetel discuss in detail on his page, and again, this is someone who not only competes in bodybuilding and other sports, but who has a PhD in sports physiology. He believes that the bench press is one of the best chest mass builders. That is his professional opinion. Contrary to what a lot of people you see on the internet and even YouTube who consider themselves science mofos, contrary to what they say, this is someone who really is the real deal, real world experience, has the credentials, and is a professor of physiology who thinks the bench press is one of the best chest builders out there if done correctly. So yeah, it could still have benefits. Even for someone who doesn't compete in powerlifting at all, it could have benefits to bodybuilders. As far as field athletes, yeah, it can have benefits. It's just that for a lot of field athletes, me personally, I think due to the angles that they hit people at, people like American football players, I happen to think things like the incline bench and the push press are slightly better than the bench press for their purposes. So it really does come down to specificity of training and what you're using it for. But yeah, for those field athletes, I'd lean more in the direction of incline work, push presses, things like that. But for general hypertrophy, the bench press is an amazing lift if done correctly. And anyone saying otherwise really is just being tit for tat with it. It's just that for me, I don't personally enjoy the regular flat bench, and I only do it because it's one of my 3 lifts in competition. But don't assume that because I don't like it that it isn't an amazing exercise. All right, next question. Working a manual job that involves a lot of lifting, loading pallets, average weight is per box 15 to 20 kilos, both lifts from below the knee level. Would it be beneficial to cut down on back work or add more to maintain back strength and overall health? Thanks. Okay, when you have a job like that that puts a lot of stress on your core and lower back through just repeated things over and over, the last thing I would do is add more back work in. Now, as far as do you need to do less, I really can't say. Normally, I would say work like that, you just adapt to it over time, and it stops impacting your recovery as long as sleep and nutrition are sufficient, and you should be able to run a regular, normal program. However, because of so much load on the lower back, and we know that the spinal erectors tend to recover a little slower than most other muscles, it could become an issue for you. So really play it by ear. Just see how your lower back feels. And if you have to cut down the workload on things like deadlifts a little bit to compensate for that, then go ahead and do so. But you really just need to listen to your body with that. Look for signs of DOMS. Watch to see if you're injury prone at all in your lower back, if you're straining it, when determining if you should adjust your program at all due to your manual labor job. So you really need to play that by ear. But the thing to remember is that with any manual labor job is that your body does adapt. The human body is an amazing machine. It's the one machine in the world that when you have it's the analogy I've always heard used is that when you have it's 10 horsepower engine and you subject it to a 12 horsepower load in an engine, it wears it out. In the human body, in the right environment, it turns your 10 horsepower engine into a 12 horsepower engine eventually. It's just that it takes time to get there. So you can reach a point to where your manual labor job actually stops negatively impacting your training and recovery in any way up to a certain threshold. All right, next question. Does having a common cold/flu increase the number of calories your body burns via trying to fight it off? If so, should training be reduced, calories be increased until you're back to normal, or should training be stopped completely? All right, there's a massive difference between a common cold and the flu. As far as raising your basic metabolic rate, yes, your body fighting off things like the flu actually does increase your metabolism. You burn through more calories at rest while fighting it. However, that doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily burn through more calories because you're going to be more sedentary. So your overall non-exercise induced caloric burn is going to be lower while on it because you're going to feel like crap. But your actual resting metabolic rate is going to be higher while you're fighting it. What I recommend with the cold, just go ahead and train, do your thing. Don't change anything. If you have the flu, you really have no business trying to train. If you're training, you're not only exposing everyone at the gym to the flu, which makes you a dick, but you're going to slow down your recovery. You're not going to be able to train effectively enough to really stimulate new adaptations. You're probably better off just resting and getting over the flu more quickly. And if you are cutting and dieting, you probably need to come back up to maintenance calories. Don't try to keep cutting through the flu. It's going to do nothing but slow down your recovery. You probably need to be eating enough that your body is able to recover and help fight it off quite a bit. So that's what I would recommend. If it's the flu, stop training completely. If you're cutting, come off your cut and bring yourself back up to maintenance and just rest and relax and get better, and then get back in the gym and keep hitting it again. All right, next question. Weight training being the same, is there any benefit to place your refeed on days where you are more active? Okay guys, this is one of these examples of stuff like what I call the 90-10 rule, to where people tend to put 90% of their effort on the stuff that's going to give them 10% of their results. This is micromanagement at this point, so take it with a grain of salt. When I say that this has an effect here, we're talking very, very small effects in the grand scheme of things. It may not be worth you even worrying about. However, the answer would be no. This potentially the opposite. You shouldn't be doing much, if any, training in the middle of a refeed, because the training itself, if you go and train, you are slowing down digestion for a few hours, you are slowing down absorption of nutrients, and you're disrupting certain things going on in your muscle tissue as far as replenishing muscle glycogen. The thing that you are doing when you are doing a refeed is you are trying to completely restore and super compensate muscle glycogen is high on the list. If you're going and training in the middle of that, you're interfering with that process to some extent, so you're going to make it slightly less efficient. It's not ideal. What I would usually recommend, if you're going to want to really try to structure a refeed around recovery and glycogen supercompensation, ideally you should do the heavier training immediately before the refeed. Now it could be the morning of and then you eat the food after, or it could be the evening or day before your refeed. You go in and you do a fairly large amount of volume and try to deplete yourself as much as you can before the refeed. That should probably be your most intense training day, or at least your highest volume training day should be 24 hours or less before your refeed. But again, this is tit for tat. This is just giving you a small edge. This isn't something that's going to make or break your cut or your recomp. It's just if you're looking to time things and going a little bit of an edge, that's what I would recommend. But I wouldn't recommend, by that same token, if you're trying to gain a small advantage, of doing any sort of serious training in the middle of the refeed. That's just not advisable. It's not making the process as efficient as it could be. All right, next question. I get a lot more DOMs now that I'm cutting. I have decreased my volume to 2/3 of normal. Should I decrease it even more? All right, this is an interesting question. And yeah, DOMs, you're going to be more prone to DOMs. You are going to recover more slowly when you're in a caloric deficit. That's just the nature of it. Your body has less energy, less fuel, less nutrition to repair and recover. So those sort of things are going to happen. Now, as far as the DOMs go, it depends on how intense they are and if you're willing to deal with them or not. The thing is, obviously, when you're cutting, you're not going to stimulate much new adaptation, so pushing yourself so hard that you're getting DOMs may not be ideal. Your goal should be to maintain what you have, as much of it as possible, when cutting. So if it becomes an issue, what you've done, the normal advice is to cut to 2/3, but that comes down to how much volume were you already doing. If you were pushing that bleeding edge on your volume already, then cutting down to 2/3 may not be enough. If you were near it, just a really good volume for stimulating really good adaptations but not really pushing the limit, 2/3 will generally get it done. So without knowing how much volume you were doing and how you were recovering before, it's kind of hard to say whether you need to cut it back further or not. However, if you don't like the DOMs, you're not enjoying the DOMs, you feel like it's interfering with your life, because again, if you're getting DOMs and you're cutting, so you're not making any positive adaptations, so there's almost no point in pushing yourself hard enough to get the DOMs. You're not helping yourself at all. So what I would consider there is either possibly reducing the volume just slightly further, particularly in the muscle groups that you're really getting the DOMs in, or your other option is to keep it where it is and maybe don't cut quite as fast. Bump your calories back up just a little bit, give your body a little more recovery to work with, and see if that helps. So you've got a couple different options there. You just need to figure out which one is right for you. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.